it's Alex and welcome to Hey Little Thrifter. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favourite horror films from the 2010s, and as usual these are my favourites, not necessarily the ones I would consider the best of the decade, but I do think there is some crossover, and as usual I'm just going to go through these in year release order rather than ranking them because that's just too difficult. And it's been interesting putting these lists together and then seeing like what similarities or themes, crop up within the top 10, and it looks like this particular top 10 list ended up having a lot of more indie and low budget films and some art house films and only a couple of US films in here, so the rest are from other places around the world. So yeah, it's not a Hollywood blockbuster list, that's for sure. So kicking this off in 2010 with Beyond the Black Rainbow, directed by Panos Cosmatos. And you might be more familiar with his film Mandy, starring Nicolas Cage, which had its moments, but for me I much preferred Beyond the Black Rainbow. So if you haven't seen it, then I highly recommend it. It does have some similar themes to Mandy, with this futuristic kind of blending of like horror, sci-fi, fantasy elements. It's visually really interesting, and throw in a bunch of bonkers and you've got a Panos Cosmatos film apparently. This is about a young woman who is at a research facility which is involved in psychic abilities and such like, and she is being researched and experimented on, and the doctor involved is pretty crazy and brilliant, and this one is just a real trip. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I remember watching this one when it first came out and thoroughly enjoyed it. It's got some really great 80s vibes to it, and it's just a great film that I don't hear enough people talk about. Next up from 2011 is Kill List, directed by Ben Wheatley. This is about a hitman who is carrying out a job of knocking off a few people for some horrendous things, and this is one of those films where it starts off as one thing and then by the end of it you're in something completely different that you weren't expecting at the beginning. It is such a great film, really underrated. It's got a few familiar faces for people in the UK at least. A lot of people you've probably seen in other film and TV. This one is dark and brutal, and it has some awesome folk horror elements to it, which I won't go into any further, but it's awesome. It's an awesome film. More people should watch this. Next up from 2013 is Under the Skin, directed by Jonathan Glazer. This is about a woman played by Scarlett Johansson who travels around Scotland in a van picking up guys, and then horrible things happen to them. And I don't want to say too much more about this one other than it does have sci-fi elements, so it's more of a horror sci-fi blend, and it is based on a novel of the same name by Michelle Faber, which I did see the film before I read the book, and I enjoyed both equally, I think, even though they do have some differences. I highly recommend both the book and the film. The film is a slow burn, it's art housey, and it is weird. It's really beautiful, it's really atmospheric and unsettling, and definitely one I would recommend if you haven't already seen it. Next from 2014 is It Follows, directed by David Robert Mitchell. This is following a girl or young woman who goes on a date with this guy, and after they have sex, it seems as if he has passed something on to her. She's basically being followed by someone or something that can take the form of anyone. It could be a stranger, it could be someone she knows. So yeah, a pretty interesting story, and there's just something about this one that I just really like the feel of it. It works really well. It's, again, atmospheric, it has its creepy moments, and while I don't think it's a perfect film, I think it's a really awesome one. Okay, next up from 2015 is The Black Coat's Daughter, directed by Oz Perkins, or Osgood Perkins, who is the son of Anthony Perkins from Psycho. This is set in a boarding school which is closing up for the holidays and everyone is leaving to go home to family, etc. But there are two girls who, through different circumstances, end up staying there. But there's something not quite right going on here, and there is some kind of demonic or satanic force or entity here involved in this story. And yeah, I don't want to say too much more about this one, but this one is so good. This is another really great slow burn, and it has a pretty small but really great cast. It's really atmospheric, it has some really creepy moments that have stayed with me, and yeah, the story just comes together in a really great way. It has a really awesome ending, and yeah, hard to say too much more about this one. I don't want to give anything more away, but highly recommend this one if you haven't seen it. Next, from 2016, is Raw, directed by Julia Ducournau. This is a French language film about a girl who goes to university to study to be a vet. She has been a vegetarian all of her life, and something happens during a hazing ritual that gives her the taste for meat. It's a great kind of coming of age film following this girl. It's a really great character study of her and these things that she's going through. It has some really awesome and gruesome moments and effects, and yeah, one in particular that really made me cringe. So yeah, that's always fun. It's dark and kind of gritty and yeah, very visceral, as you could probably imagine, and I just think it's an excellent film. Next up, also from 2016, is The Transfiguration, directed by Michael O'Shea. This is about a teenage boy who has had some traumatic events going on in his home life, and he is obsessed with vampires, and he always watches vampire films, and he actually believes he is a vampire, and he does actually go out and suck people's blood. And yeah, he's a very troubled kid and very much a loner, and there is a teenage girl who moves into the building that he lives in. She is also somewhat troubled and doesn't have a very happy home life, and they form a friendship and turns into a bit of a romance. But yeah, don't let the word romance fool you. This is not a light-hearted movie in the slightest. It is dark and bleak and just heartbreaking. I think it's a really unique film. It uses the vampire lore in a really interesting way. It's again a really great kind of character study and coming of age story. It does have some pretty disturbing moments as well. And yeah, I just thought this was a really unique film that did what it did well. You know, it definitely feels like a bit of a low budget film, but I think it works with what it's got really well. It's got some really great performances, and I think more people should give this one a chance because I really don't hear many people talk about it. Next up from 2018 is Climax, directed by Gaspar Noé. This is about a group of dancers. It's set in the 90s and apparently based on a true story, and they are celebrating in a dance hall, and someone has spiked the sangria with LSD and shit gets crazy. Gaspar Noé is one of my favourite directors. He is probably most famous for Irreversible, which is super brutal, and another of his films, I Stand Alone, is equally brutal. Yeah, he's just a really interesting director and isn't afraid to push the boundaries, and Climax is no exception. I saw this one when it came out in the cinema and it was an experience. I can imagine it would be a visual experience on a TV, but yeah, seeing it on the big screen was absolutely amazing. The cast are all really awesome. I believe some of them aren't actors, and I think a lot of what happens in the film was improvised. So yeah, it's really interesting to see this situation unfold, and it is wild, it is dark, and awful things happen, and it's also, yeah, super trippy and some crazy visuals and camera work, but it's an experience, it really is. I loved this one. Next up, also from 2018, is Possum, directed by Matthew Holness. That's right, Garth Marenghi himself. But yeah, Possum is not fun. It's not in any way, shape or form a comedy. It's like right at the other end of the horror spectrum. It is super dark and bleak. This is about a man who was a children's puppeteer, and he returns to his childhood home and moves back in with his uncle, and most of the film is just these two characters. They are both absolutely brilliant and give such great and yeah, really chilling performances. And yes, there is a puppet in the film and it is absolutely terrifying. This one is definitely a slower paced story, and the way the story plays out and things are slowly revealed was really well done. It has some really great creepy moments as well, and yeah, it's just the kind of film that at the end of it you just kind of want to cry and also like just scrub yourself clean. Yeah, it's awesome. And to end on a slightly happier note, the final pick in my list is from 2019, Extraordinary, directed by Mike Ahern and Enda Loughman. This is an Irish horror comedy, and oh my god, it had me crying with laughter. Like, I know the brand of comedy probably isn't going to be absolutely everyone's cup of tea, but it was definitely mine. This is about a woman who has some kind of supernatural abilities, and a man in her village, his daughter goes missing, and it turns out that she has been kidnapped by this washed up rock singer. He has kidnapped this girl in order to perform a ritual because he wants to have his rock career back and have another hit single. So the woman with the supernatural abilities and the father of the daughter join forces to try and save her. I remember seeing the trailer for this and thinking it looked hilarious and definitely my cup of tea, but you never know whether like all of the funny bits are in the trailer and the film itself is a bit of a letdown. But somehow this one actually ended up totally exceeding my expectations. It was funny from start to finish. It had a lot of heart too, and yeah, I thought all of the characters were brilliant, and yeah, it was just such a fun time. It's like Father Ted meets The Exorcist, so if that sounds good to you, then I definitely recommend this one. So that is it. We got to the end of the list. That was my favourites of the 2010s, so yeah, 2010 through 2019. I guess we're going to have to wait a while before I can do a top 10 of the 2020s, seeing as we're not even 1 year into that decade. But yeah, if I'm still around on YouTube at that point, then watch this space. Let me know if you've seen any of these, let me know your thoughts, and let me know what your favourites are from this decade. I have really enjoyed putting these top 10 lists together. They're a lot of fun to do, and I would like to continue doing some more horror film related videos. I've been doing these once a month, so I'd really like to continue that as a monthly thing on my channel. So if there are any other top 10 horror films that you would like to see me cover, I would love to do that. I mean, we've got plenty of options. We've gone through all the decades, so I guess now we can get into subgenres or, you know, underrated hidden gems. I definitely want to do some videos on those kind of films. We could do scary films, disturbing films, I don't know, plenty of options, so let me know what you'd like to see and I'll see what I can do. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video. Bye!